They told me to sit down and be quiet at my own husband's estate dinner. Said I was just the grandma now. Like I hadn't spent 4 decades building this family from scratch, brick by brick, moment by moment, through lean years and long nights. I didn't say a word, just smiled politely, stood up from the chair they had clearly reserved for someone less important, and walked out. They laughed when the door shut behind me. Thought I was being dramatic. But by the time the sun came up, their accounts were frozen, the locks were changed, and everything they thought was theirs was legally mine. And I wasn't done yet. Before we begin, I just want to say, thank you for watching. If you've ever been dismissed, pushed aside, or erased from something you helped build, stay with me. You'll want to hear what happens next. My name is Marjorie Ellison. I'm 71 years old. And apparently, to my own family, that means I'm irrelevant. I ironed my blouse twice before heading to the dinner. Checked my lipstick 3 times. Told myself not to cry no matter what. It was just dinner, just family, just the people I'd poured everything into since I was 21 years old. We were gathering at my grandson Jared's house. The glassy white modern one by the marshes in Charleston. The one he and Natalie bought after Franklin and I co-signed the loan and paid the first 2 years of mortgage behind the scenes. Not that anyone mentions that anymore. Jared had called a few days prior, saying we needed to streamline things now that Grandpa was gone. Just a casual family talk about logistics, he said. I brought my homemade sour cherry pie, Franklin's favorite. I thought maybe it would soften things. Maybe we'd sit around and remember him, tell stories, be decent to each other for once. When I walked in, no one even looked up. Jared was already pouring cocktails like he was hosting a yacht club mixer. Natalie floated through the kitchen in stilettos and a linen jumpsuit, directing the caterer like she owned the place. Their daughter Emma gave me a small smile, then quickly turned away, as if she was embarrassed. We sat down at the dinner table, one I gave them as a wedding gift. Jared cleared his throat. We've been thinking it's time to simplify. Clean lines, clean books. I knew what that meant. Less of me, more of them. When I gently asked, have you spoken to Mr. Rutledge about the estate clauses? Natalie didn't even look up. She just said, you're just the widow, Grandma. Maybe stay quiet for now. The silence in that room? It didn't feel like peace. It felt like burial. And this time, I was the one being buried alive. I didn't sleep that night. Not even for a minute. I sat in Franklin's old armchair, the one with the cracked leather and faded plaid cushion we always fought over on winter nights. The house felt like it was holding its breath. Every tick of the grandfather clock behind me sounded like a countdown I didn't remember starting. Their words kept playing in my head. Just the widow, like that was all I was now. Like I'd become background noise in a life I helped shape. Around 2:15 a.m., I stood up and walked barefoot down the hallway, past the photos they no longer asked about, into the den. The air smelled like old books and cedar, the way Franklin liked it. I went to the shelf we called his wall. Encyclopedias, archives, university journals. He used to joke that no burglar would ever touch it because it looked too boring. Behind the 1987 edition of the Southern History Quarterly, my fingers brushed against something solid. A small, dark wooden box. I hadn't seen it since before his diagnosis. I pulled it out with trembling hands, sat on the floor, and opened the brass clasp. Inside was a single white envelope, thick with folded pages, labeled in his blocky handwriting, M. Only if they forget who you are. My throat closed up. Franklin wasn't a sentimental man. He showed love by keeping the roof fixed and the oil changed. But this was deliberate. I opened the envelope. The first page was a handwritten letter. No greeting, no fluff. If you're reading this, they've already started. And I'm sorry. I wanted to tell you everything, but I knew you'd try to protect them. You always do, but now it's time to protect yourself. I've moved everything, house, accounts, foundation, under your name. They don't know. They'll try to shame you into silence. Don't let them. And if they ever try to take it from you, light the match. Behind the letter were copies of legal documents. Property transfers, title deeds, amended trust clauses, power of attorney, all dated, notarized, sealed. 8 months before he passed. While I thought we were just battling cancer, He'd been protecting me from something worse, his own blood. I sat on the floor for a long time, holding the papers like they were fire. Because in a way, they were. And the house was about to burn. By 6:30 a.m., I had already made coffee, changed clothes, and organized every document into a neat folder. Franklin always said I packed like a librarian on a mission, and that morning, I was. At exactly 7 o'clock, I called Mason Rutledge, Franklin's attorney of 31 years. The man who always wore bow ties and kept extra tissues in his briefcase. He answered on the second ring. "Marjorie?" His voice was groggy but steady. "I found it," I said. "The box behind the books." He left everything. There was a pause. Not shock. Just the sound of a man processing a moment he always suspected would come. "I'll be there by 9, he replied. "Don't speak to anyone else until then." At 8:57 sharp, Mason stepped through my door carrying the same worn-out briefcase he brought to Franklin's retirement ceremony. I had already laid out the documents on the dining table, the one Jared claimed was too old to keep. Mason examined each page with the kind of care most people reserve for newborns or bombs. After an hour, he leaned back, laced his fingers, and said, "It's airtight." Franklin wasn't just careful, he was surgical. I nodded, not trusting my voice. He continued, "You now control the entirety of the estate. Both properties, the family trust, the university endowment, and the rare manuscript collection." I blinked. "Even the endowment?" He nodded again. "Franklin listed you as sole steward of the Ellison Educational Fund. He removed Jared's name 6 weeks before passing. By 11:30, I had signed 6 more documents. The legal activation of my authority. No ceremony, no celebration, just quiet reclaiming. At 12:12 p.m., Jared texted me. "Hey, random Q. Do you know why the cabin account is frozen?" I didn't reply. 10 minutes later, Natalie's call lit up my phone. I let it go to voicemail. Her voice, sweet and artificial, oozed panic. "Hi Marjorie, sorry to bug you, but something weird's happening with our card. Just wondering if you changed something?" I smiled. By 1:45, the family group chat began buzzing. "Trevor, did someone revoke access to the condo account?" Emma sent nothing. She never did, because somehow, I think she already knew that the woman they tried to erase had just picked up the pen and started rewriting everything. By sunset, the storm had landed on my porch. Jared stood at my front door, arms crossed, the veins in his temple pulsing like he'd just been benched from his own game. I opened the door calmly, still in the same cardigan I wore that morning. The one Franklin used to call my battle sweater. "You want to explain what's going on?" He barked. No greeting, no decency. I held the door just wide enough to speak. "What's going on is the truth. You're just not used to hearing it without a filter." His jaw flexed. "I had every right," he started. "You had every assumption," I interrupted. "And you bet on me being silent." He hesitated, just a flicker, but it was there. That twitch in his eye when the bluff gets called. From the driveway, Natalie stepped out of their car, phone in hand like it was a weapon. She walked up in heels too high for gravel, chin tilted. "If this is some emotional stunt," she said, "we'll be talking to a judge." I didn't flinch, just stepped back, grabbed the red folder from the entry table, and handed it to her. Stamped across the front in bold, black ink, "Irrevocable transfer of ownership." Her smile cracked like ice in hot water. "This can't be binding," she stammered. "It's not only binding," I said, "it's already in effect." She flipped through the pages, eyes scanning like a poker player bluffing the last hand. Then I saw it. The moment she reached the signature page. Franklin's name, my name, Mason Rutledge's seal. Natalie stiffened. Jared looked over her shoulder. "You forged this," he accused. "Dad would never do this." "He did it," I replied, "because he knew what you'd try to do after he was gone." They didn't respond. They didn't have to. The silence between them said more than any words ever could. That night, just before bed, I went out to check the mailbox. Sitting on top of the pile, as if hand-delivered, was a white envelope with no return address. Inside, a printed form with 3 words circled in red ink. "Capacity evaluation recommended." I held the paper like a dead thing. They were trying to challenge my mental fitness. They couldn't take my name off the deed. So now, they wanted to prove I didn't deserve to have one. By morning, I was already at Mason's office with the envelope. He took one look at the document and muttered, "They're getting desperate." I didn't answer. I didn't need to. The insult was louder than any scream they could throw. Within 48 hours, Mason traced it. The form hadn't been filed officially, yet. But it had been printed and highlighted at the law office of one of Natalie's sorority friends. A junior associate with a shaky track record and a bigger ego than ethics. And then came the gold. An assistant from that office, new, sharp, and evidently with a working conscience, sent Mason an email. "I'm not comfortable being part of this. Natalie asked us to backdate a psychological fitness claim against her mother-in-law. She said it would help speed things up. I'm attaching the internal messages. I'm not involved in this. Please don't drag me into it." That was all we needed. Forgery, fraud, attempted abuse of the court system. The next day, as I poured myself a cup of peppermint tea and watched the crows stalk the garden fence, a sheriff's cruiser rolled up outside Natalie and Jared's house. It wasn't subtle. They cuffed Natalie right on the front lawn, in her silk blouse and designer mules, while Jared fumbled with his phone, yelling, "There's been a mistake." Oh, there had been a mistake. But it wasn't made by the sheriff. It was made the moment they thought I wouldn't fight back. Emma, their daughter, called me that night. Her voice was quiet, like someone talking under a blanket. "Grandma," she said, "what's happening?" I paused, then told her the truth. "They tried to erase me, sweetheart. But your grandfather made sure I had the eraser instead." She didn't speak for a few seconds. Then whispered, "I miss him." "I do too," I said. "But this, what's happening now?" He saw it coming. That's why he did what he did. There was a silence again, then her voice, smaller this time. "Are you okay?" "I am," I said. "Because I'm not alone in this. I've got truth. And now, finally, I've got control." She didn't reply after that. But she didn't hang up either. We just sat there, two women across a phone line, breathing through generations of betrayal. And for the first time since Franklin died, I felt something shift. Not revenge, not relief, but resolve. They invited me to a backyard brunch like nothing had happened. Like Natalie hadn't been arrested in front of their hydrangeas. Like they hadn't tried to label me mentally unfit for my own life. But I went, because sometimes, showing up is louder than slamming a door. I wore Franklin's old watch and my best sun hat. The one he always said made me look too rich to be argued with. I brought a small folder with me. Labeled in Sharpie. Firewood. The yard was dressed up in plastic perfection. Tablecloths from a discount catalog. Grocery store croissants stacked like a hotel buffet. Jared manned the grill like it was some campaign event. Trevor, the cousin who kept so quiet it was easy to forget he was family, hovered near the cooler, avoiding eye contact. Emma spotted me first. She gave me a real smile. The kind that doesn't ask for anything. I walked to the center of the table and set the folder down. No greetings. No performance. Jared raised an eyebrow. "You brought paperwork?" "I brought proof," I said. "And a warning." He scoffed. Candace style. Natalie wasn't there, of course. Out on bail. Most likely scrambling to frame herself as the victim on social media. Trevor opened a beer and pretended to look distracted, but I saw the sweat on his collar. I opened the folder and began laying the documents down. One by one. Unauthorized withdrawals. Backdated loans. A forged signature on an old partnership form. Leases being rented out without my knowledge. All of it tied back to Jared, and a few to Trevor. "This," I said quietly, "is what you did while Franklin was dying." Jared barked out a nervous laugh. "You're bluffing." "No," I said, locking eyes with him. "Your father just wasn't naive." Trevor swallowed hard. "I didn't know about the lease." "That wasn't. I thought it was temporary." "You didn't ask," I replied. "That silence was your signature." Jared slammed his spatula down. "You're going to burn the whole family down over paperwork?" I stepped closer. "You burned it when you started stealing from the ashes." I turned, gathered the folder, and began walking toward the gate. Candace's voice echoed from the patio speaker. She must have recorded some message for damage control, but I didn't stop. Just before I reached the hedge, I turned back and said loud enough for them to hear. You don't get to feast on a legacy you didn't build. And then I left, not in anger, but in full command of everything they thought I'd lost. I didn't pour wine that night. I poured power, one signature at a time. By Monday morning, the lake house, yes, the one Jared posted about every summer like it was his crown jewel, was officially listed for sale. The SUV Natalie had called a gift from Jared's startup was picked up by the leasing company within hours. And the downtown condo Trevor had been quietly renting for under-the-table cash? Lease terminated, locks changed, none of them saw it coming. But Franklin did, and now, I was simply honoring his foresight. Later that week, I called Mason and said I wanted to do more than remove their claws. I wanted to rebuild what they tried to shred. We set up the Ellison Foundation, named after Franklin. A private grant for widowed women over 60 who had been manipulated out of control over their homes, finances, or futures. I didn't want a statue. I wanted a shield, for women like me, who were told to sit down and stay grateful while everyone else ate off their plate. Then I called the University of Charleston and donated Franklin's entire rare book collection to the Archival Center. In return, they named the wing after him, and made me its lifetime honorary trustee. I didn't tell the family. I let them read about it in the alumni newsletter. That evening, as I was organizing documents in Franklin's old office, I found something unexpected, an envelope tucked behind his tax folders. Not labeled, just a slip of notebook paper inside. It was a single line, in his slanted hand. She held the roof up. Make sure she gets the house. My breath caught. I touched the words like they were alive. Because in a way, they were. The next morning, I transferred the deed to the yellow cottage by the river into Emma's name. The only one who hadn't lied, hadn't schemed, hadn't looked away when it got uncomfortable. When I told her, she cried, not performative, not guilt-soaked, just quiet, stunned sobs. I don't deserve this, she whispered. Yes, you do, I said. Because you didn't pretend. It wasn't about rewarding loyalty. It was about planting something in clean soil. Because this legacy wasn't just something I protected. It was something I was finally ready to grow again, on my own terms. A week later, I received an invitation. Not embossed, not thoughtful, just a text from Jared that read, "We're having a small get-together. To reconnect, would be good to see you." Like we hadn't stood on opposite sides of a battlefield just days ago. Like I'd imagined the betrayal. But I went, because sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is show up. Not to forgive, not to reconcile, but to stand, fully, visibly, and without apology. The house looked smaller now. Maybe it was the silence behind the walls. Or maybe it was because now, I held the deed in my purse. Emma met me at the door. She didn't say a word, just slipped her arm into mine and walked me to the table like she'd been waiting years to do it. Trevor was there, eyes heavy, face pale, regret clinging to him like a cold. Candace wasn't. Part of her deal with the state was to stay 100 feet away from me. I didn't miss her. Jared stood at the head of the table like he used to. Like he still believed a title could be self-declared. "We've been through a lot," he began, voice trembling just slightly. "Families weather storms in different ways." I raised a hand. "This wasn't a storm," I said. "It was a consequence. And all of you helped write it." You could hear a fork clink against a plate across the room. No one moved. No one defended themselves. I looked at each of them. Trevor, the quiet coward. Jared, the golden boy with rust in his heart. And Emma, the only light that didn't flicker when the wind blew. "You told me I was just the widow," I said. "But I wasn't quiet when I built this family. I wasn't quiet when I kept it alive. And I won't be quiet now that I've taken it back." I stood, not in rage, not in performance, but in certainty. This table, this room, I own them now. Legally, emotionally, structurally. I turned to walk away, but paused once more at the door. "You don't have to like me," I said, "but you will respect the woman who refused to disappear." And then I stepped outside. The sun was crisp. The wind smelled like salt and lilacs. And for the first time since Franklin left, I felt weightless. Final reflection: the lesson power doesn't always shout. Sometimes it sits quietly through decades of being underestimated, and then, When the moment is right, it stands. I didn't fight back out of bitterness. I fought because the foundation we built deserved better than to rot in the hands of people who didn't know its worth. And if you've ever been told to stay silent, to step aside, or to shrink in your own story, I'll tell you what I learned. The moment you stop asking for permission, is the moment you start writing the ending yourself. And that, my dear, is how you reclaim a legacy.